Hello everyone and welcome to my review for Jujutsu Kaisen Chapter 180. As always, if you haven't already, you should definitely be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of my Jujutsu Kaisen content. In addition to that, I'd like to try and hit 100 likes on this video, so let's see if we can do that. With that out of the way, let's get right into this week's review. This definitely feels like the penultimate chapter of Sendai Colony. It gives me the same vibes as we got when Megumi's fight with Reggie ended. So I imagine we're going to be wrapping up with Sendai, not next week, because either Jujutsu or Jump are on break next week. Whichever one it is, we're not getting a chapter next week, so, next chapter, we'll probably wrap things up here, and then get a bit of a tease for whatever we're going to be focusing on next for the next several months. So the sequences in this chapter, I guess it's just one big sequence. This stuff is all really interesting. So, starters here. The maximum power of Ryu's full power Granite Blast is slightly higher than Yuta and Rika going full output with a blast of cursed energy. Do you know how insane that is? So they weren't kidding. They weren't kidding. Ryu really does have the highest output of all of the players, at least in the Sendai Colony. To be able to outdo Yuta Okotsu in cursed energy output is fucking insane. Because Yuta's not holding back here, really by any means. He does something that's technically holding back, but it's not him holding back his power. To be able to one-up that is ridiculous. These last few chapters have proven to me, undoubtedly, Ryu gets a position in top 10. I know a few people have asked, over the last month or two, Misk, when are you going to do a new version of your top 10 strongest list, or a new power tier list? Because, it's been over a year. Well, I don't plan on doing one for a little bit, for reasons such as this. We're getting introduced to a lot of new characters, and some of them are going to be mixing up the power rankings a little bit. We have characters like Yuki and Hakari, who we know are strong, but we don't know how strong because we haven't seen them do anything yet. We're going to be seeing both of them do stuff during the culling games. We have Hakari's fight with Kashimo coming up, maybe when we're done with Sendai. That's at least the one that's set up to be next. We could end up seeing someplace else. But we've got Hakari's fight coming up soon, so we're finally going to get a good idea of how strong Hakari is and how inconsistent he is. And I think the end of Culling Game, we're probably going to have Yuki and Chozo fight Kenjaku. So then we're finally going to see how strong Yuki is. These are both people that are probably in the top 10, but because we haven't seen anything from them, we don't know where to put them. Or, I don't know where to put them, so I don't want to do another list until I know where to put them. Ryu is someone who has made the list. I imagine Kashimo is going to make the list as well. Ryu is the strongest new character to be introduced so far in the Culling Game. I don't count Hakari as... Technically, we even met him before the Culling Game started, so, it wasn't even really someone introduced in Culling Game. It was the prelude to Culling Game. But, we've been aware of Hakari's existence since, Chapter 10 or something. The guy has cursed energy output that surpasses Yuta Okotsu. And he has a domain expansion. His destructive power is really only surpassed by, a couple characters. He's definitely... He's top 5 in destructive power, I would say, probably. Just doing, a very spur-of-the-moment short list in my head. He probably makes top 5 in terms of destructive power. And he's probably top 5 strongest sorcerers we've seen. We've got several curses that make it up there. I think actually the majority of the top 10 list consists of curses, doesn't it? Arguably. Actually, no, it's about half. He gets up there. I would say Ryu is probably about on par, if maybe not stronger, than Hanami and Dagon, who I'd say are fairly equivalent to each other. So he is the biggest mix-up we've had to the list so far, and this is only the second part of Culling Game. We are still within the first act of the arc, pretty much. We're going to be meeting a lot of people who are very strong in the relatively near future, and I think Ryu has been one of the best ways to start that off, I guess. Like, Reggie was decently strong. Higuruma is strong, but he's more strong in kind of like a hacks way, which can make power scaling him a little difficult, whereas Ryu is very simple. And it goes to show that simple characters are not bad characters. He's like Toto in that sense. He's great. So Yuta understands that if he wants to beat Ryu in this, I don't know, energy beam standoff, he's going to have to fire off before Ryu reaches full power. He can't let him charge up all the way. However, he looks at Ryu. He sees the expression on his face, the look in his eyes, his smoldering gaze. After 400 years of desire, by the way, confirmation that he's from the same time period as Kashimo. Very interesting. Once again, it seems like more insight into how strong Kashimo probably is. I'm assuming these dudes are fairly relative to each other. Something is unlocked within Yuta, which is very surprising and unprecedented. What is this? Yuta's heart. And he decides to hold off for a second so that Ryu can reach full power for his Granite Blast. This is pretty crazy. This is pretty wild. He actively gives up an advantage. He gives up any possible advantage he would have in this situation, puts himself at a disadvantage for the sake of going along with Ryu and letting him have the good time that he wants, letting him get his fill. It's really cool. It's really nice. Because Yuta's probably like, yeah, ultimately I'm going to win this. I'm stronger than Ryu. I'm going to beat him. But I've been fighting this whole time, kind of not really caring about it. I haven't been like super invested in this fight. I've just kind of been going through the motions, which you've been able to see. Like his facial expression's been fairly the same throughout this entire fight. He's not really that emotionally invested in it. It's just kind of him doing his job. Whereas for Ryu, like, this is everything to him. You know, he's been living for this moment. So it'd be like kind of disingenuous to not go along and help this man having a good time. So he's like, yeah, fuck it. You know what? Just this once, I'll let you charge up your Grenade Blast. I'll let you get to full power so I can give you the exchange that you want. And he does. And do you know what happens? Ryu wins the exchange. His Grenade Blast is stronger than Rika and Yuta's Love Beam, which I guess I could call it. This is clearly not exactly the same as it was at the end of Volume 0. Well, if you want to get really insane, you could say that it is, because Rika appears to be in the same state she was in at the end of Volume 0, but there's no, like, binding vow or anything to remove any limitations on their power. So, theoretically, it's weaker than the blast at the end of Volume 0. But, if you want to say that it is the same, well, shit. That's probably the strongest non-domain expansion attack in the whole series. So he beats him out there. He is having a blast. He loves this shit. Rika gets back up, Rika fires a blast at him, and then Yuta goes to the side to try and get Ryu while he's distracted with the blast. But Ryu blocks the blast with his fucking hand. It was fairly impressive when Yuta did this with Grenade Blast, but ultimately it's like, yeah, it's Yuta. Yeah, he's blocking an attack from someone weaker than him. It's cool and all. You know, it's pretty impressive, but it's nothing crazy. Ryu being able to do this is nuts, because once again, it's Rika. And he's blocking the attack with his fucking hand. Once again, this man has never ceased to impress me. I think a lot of us, me, a lot of people, were like, oh yeah, Yuta's gonna drop these guys. Like, he's gonna steamroll. The fight's gonna be cool. You know, there's gonna be cool shit happening. Yuta will be mildly inconvenienced, but then he'll, like, pull out Rika and then just demolish them. But that's not really what happened. It was a real fight after he pulled out Rika. Because these guys are strong. Especially Ryu. Ryu is really goddamn strong. This has been, like, I don't know how to keep... I'm just going to keep repeating myself over and over again. He's just so impressive. He's so impressive and cool. I really like Ryu. He is one of the best new additions we've gotten from the Culling games thus far. Like, Higuruma, outstanding. Already top 3 Jujutsu characters for me. Ryu, incredibly entertaining, tremendous addition to the high-tier characters. It's really nice to have, like, a new character show up and sort of mix up power rankings a little bit, in a way that feels really natural and satisfying. Like, nothing about Ryu feels like bullshit or anything. It's just really simple and nice. So, he blocks Rika's blast. Presumably his hand is burnt a little bit. He turns to Yuta, does Granite Blast, but Yuta redirects it using Uro's skybending technique, because his technique is back. I know there was some confusion from the end of last chapter, talking about Yuta's technique not being usable because of the domain, and that not really making sense because the source of his technique arsenal was supposed to be Rika, but Rika wasn't caught in the domain. If I had to try and think of an explanation, Yuta's technique, quote-unquote, involves him being able to access techniques from Rika. That requires him to have some kind of connection. Doing domain expansion interrupted the connection, so he wasn't able to call upon his copied techniques. Rika was still able to do stuff, but he wasn't able to use the techniques that he had stored in Rika. That's probably the best I could think of for an explanation. But now, he's recovered. He can use his copied techniques again. He copies Uro's technique. He redirects Granite Blast back up into the sky. Ryu starts freaking out, because he's wondering, how the fuck did you do this? I'm pretty sure he was... Yes, he didn't see Yuta use Druv's technique. That was Uro that saw that, and Uro was like, is his technique mimicry? Is that it? How? He's not just a cursed speech user. It's funny that he uses that one time. Like, that's the first time he uses a technique, and then they both just thought he was a cursed speech user. That's really funny. Because people with Yuta's an anomaly. There's no one else that we're aware of that has his power in the same way that he does. So, of course, first technique he pulls out, that's what they're going to think his technique is. So, Ryu's mind is racing, trying to think of, like, what's going on here? How does Akotsu's technique work? It's mimicry? What were the restrictions? What did he do in order to be able to copy it? Unless there's no conditions. And he's thinking this, but then he thinks of Rika eating Uro's arm, and he wonders if that's the condition. But I think he's wrong, because, well, you know, Rika never ate any part of Inumaki. This is still the body and power of Rika, so presumably it's still storing any techniques that were copied back before Rika's spirit passed on to the afterlife. So maybe, if there is some kind of condition involved with, like, I don't know, attacking the person using the technique, that would still be there, so he wouldn't have to do that to copy cursed speech again. But what I think this just is Ryu's trying really hard to think of an explanation for Yuta's ability to copy techniques. He's just trying to think of literally anything that could explain it. What possible condition could there be for him to be able to mimic techniques? And he's doing that because a power as broken as Yuta's is just incomprehensible. Presumably Kenjaku is still right about him being able to unconditionally copy techniques. Seems like he's not able to unconditionally use them anymore, but as far as we can tell, the ability to copy them is still unconditional. And I think more so this like rapid fire internal thought process is more so to show that Ryu is kind of thrown off by this. He's in a state of shock, so he's not really preparing himself to defend against Yuta, who hits him with Thin Ice Missile and does some pretty serious damage. I mean, we have not seen Ryu cough up blood like that before. Like, he's puking it out, and then Rika comes down and punches him on top of the head. When a really good panel, by the way. But the 5 minutes are up, so Rika can't fully manifest anymore. She goes back to her incomplete state, and Ryu's not out. He's got blood streaming down his face. You know, he's probably got some kind of split skin on his scalp or something. Like, his head's been split open. So he's got blood streaming down his face. He's looking all crazy. He punches Rika and knocks her out. We already saw when Rika fully manifested, he was able to knock her, like, I don't know, 50 feet away or something. Knocked her into a building or something. Which is ridiculous, because it's Rika. So, Rika not fully manifested? Oh, he knocks her the fuck out, basically. She was already, like, you know, kind of barely manifested by now, because she had fully manifested for 5 minutes. So, she wasn't exactly in her best state, but the fact that he could punch her into, like, de-manifesting is amazing. Him and Yuta go into one last melee exchange. Yuta grabs him by the jacket, holds him down in place, and then the Granite Blast that Yuta redirected back up into the air comes crashing back down directly on top of Ryu. The man is fried. He's toasted here. His hair is all messed up. The pompadour is gone, but he actually looks pretty good. You know, instead of looking like some kind of Japanese street punk from the 80s or something, he looks more like an 80s rock star or something. I dig the look. I actually think he looks good without the pompadour as well. Not dissing pompadour power or anything, but he actually still looks really good with this messed up hairstyle. And he's still standing, by the way. I originally thought that he, like, fell down or something, sort of because of the angle. I thought it looked more like that, but no, they're both still standing. So he's standing up after tanking his own attack unprepared. That's crazy. And he says, "Thank you, I'm full now." And Yuta's looking very happy. Yuta's just looking happy to be here. And the last panel of the chapter is a bunch of cleaned off plates. Finished the meal with no regrets. That was a very good chapter, and a very good end to a very good fight. Which is kind of also a very good mini arc. Sendai Colony is the best arc, quote-unquote, we've gotten out of Culling Game so far, which isn't saying a lot, because it's only the second one, really. But Tokyo Colony number 1 was really good. It was really good. You know, the stuff with Higuruma was really good. Both of the major fights were really solid. This is something else, man. I would go so far, maybe it's recency bias or anything, but I would say that the Sendai Colony is on par with some Shibuya quality. More of the meathead parts of Shibuya, you know, like the crazy fight and stuff, like the Zenin team versus Dagon, something like that. But it's up there. And I don't think this is just recency bias, because I don't think really any of the post-Shibuya fights have made me feel the same way. They've all been good. You know, I'm not saying that post-Shibuya has been bad. I've greatly enjoyed it. But, you know, we were winding down from a major arc, getting started setting up this new major arc, and to already be reaching this level of hype and quality this early on is insane to me. Now we gotta get into a little bit of speculation. We have to wonder here, what is going to be the fate of Ryu and Uro? Because Uro is not dead. There was no point count for Ryu after he blasted Uro last chapter, so she's still alive. Probably barely, but she's alive. And Ryu is very clearly alive here. He's still standing up, but he's satisfied. He has no desire for anything else at this point. Yuta's pretty happy. He doesn't seem to be, like, bloodlusted or anything. If you had to ask me, it looks like this could very easily be resolved by Yuta being like, hey, are you done fighting now? Yeah. Okay, cool. And then they're just chill. Ultimately, Yuta set his mind upon killing these guys because he viewed them as a massive threat to the civilians. We know he wants the points, but he could get 5 points from any sorcerer until the rule change is made. But, he needs their permission to get their points. So if the rule comes into effect, he's going to have to be on, semi-good terms with them, or at least convince them to give him their points. So I don't think Yuta really has any good reason to kill Ryu at this point. Unless Ryu tries some shit next chapter, which, again, I don't think he's going to because he's satisfied. Ryu probably lives. Yuta's not the type of dude to just murder someone for points. He's not going to do that. He'll go find some other asshole, someone who's actually kind of posing a threat to innocent people. There is still the possibility that Ryu dies because Uro is still alive. Uro definitely will try to kill Ryu. She's not in the best states right now. However, I definitely think she could probably try and sneak up on Ryu, get some kind of bitch surprise attack on him, which would definitely leave a bad taste in our mouths, but would then make her immediate obliteration fairly satisfying. It's also possible that Uro lives and becomes some side character, some supporting character joining Yuta, because we've definitely been setting up quite a few things with her character. She's definitely gotten the most sort of setup out of the Sendai colony members, even if you could argue that Ryu's gotten more focus. So still a possibility that she lives as well. Based on this chapter alone, I would say Ryu's more likely for sticking around. He's also the one I hope sticks around more, because I like the guy a lot more. So we'll just have to see what happens. And of course, I'm once again assuming that next chapter is going to be the end of Sendai Colony, and then we're going to be getting into whatever the next little chunk of the culling game is going to be. Either Hakari versus Kashimo in Tokyo Colony number 2. That's certainly the big thing that we've all been kind of waiting for. Though it is possible that we could get bamboozled and focused on some other people instead, that we didn't really get set up for showing up yet. I don't think Maki can show up unless we're going to go, later in the day, because I think it's, right around now that the Zenin Massacre is happening. We could always see what's going on with the Kyoto students, because we haven't checked up with them in quite some time. We probably won't do that until after we are done with the Zenin stuff, after that happens in the timeline of events, because, Mai and Momo, that's kind of important to Kyoto. So maybe after that. I'd say right now, going over to Hakari is the most likely thing. So get excited for that, I guess. But with that, that's all for this week's review. If you enjoyed, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that notification bell so you don't miss any of my uploads. I do Jujutsu Kaisen chapter reactions and reviews every week that we get a new chapter. If you enjoy discussing Jujutsu Kaisen with other people, or you just enjoy the content I produce on this channel, I highly suggest you check out my Discord server. I have a link to that down in the description, and since it's the end of the video, I might as well give a shout out to my wonderful patrons. Special thanks to Archbear CJ2K, Neo, Dijon Redden, K-God, Chris Redfield, Rat, Ryzen 4K, Artist, Wave of Manga, Chuck's Feed and Seed, Jakester EZ, Play Free Labs, Kanichi Kaneda, Strawbones, Neverest, Daniel Powell, Brandon Smith, Alex Latella, Abdullah, and Charles C. Highland. Thank you all very much for supporting me on Patreon. I greatly appreciate it. And if you too want to get a shout out at some point during videos, early access to episodes of Elden Ring Lore Explained, or exclusive access to reactions for One Piece and The Boxer, you can always become a patron as well. There's a link to my Patreon down in the description. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys around. Take care.